The day John confessed his feelings to the beautiful transfer student. Everyone thought I'd lose it, run over crying and make a scene. But even after the confession was over, I didn't show up. John didn't know that at that moment, I was wearing his roommate's hoodie, sitting innocently on his roommate's bed, and asking, "I got your bed wet, how are you gonna sleep tonight?" Leo averted his gaze, his Adam's apple bobbing, and tossed me a towel. "Go dry your hair, I'll change the sheets for you." John planned to confess to that pretty transfer student. He had reminded everyone to keep it from me. But what he didn't know was that someone had already spilled the beans. Everyone knew I liked John and dreamed of marrying him. This time, John fell hard for that girl at first sight. Everyone expected I'd cry, make a scene, or even threaten to do something drastic. People love watching these dramatic love struggles. They were all waiting for me to break down and charge in, flipping everything upside down. But too bad for them, John finished his confession smoothly without me showing up. The crowd watching looked a bit disappointed. Even John didn't seem too happy. He held his new girlfriend and pulled out his phone. Not a single call or message. John frowned slightly. Then he called out to everyone, "Tonight's on me, everyone's invited." The classmates cheered. I finally stepped out from behind the bushes. Someone with sharp eyes saw me and immediately shouted, "Jane is here." Jane showed up. I knew it. No way Jane would stay away. John suddenly looked up and his lips curved slightly when he saw me. I ignored the onlookers and walked straight to John. "Jane." John pulled his new girlfriend closer. He looked at me, his voice calm, "You can't force feelings. We've known each other for 10 years. I don't want to say anything hurtful that damages our past. From now on, I'll still see you as a little sister. If you need anything, you can still come to me." After saying that, he lowered his voice slightly, "With everyone watching, don't make a scene, go back." "John," I interrupted him and took a step closer. He frowned again. "Jane, listen." I smiled and handed him the bracelet I had just taken off my wrist. "I came here to return this." Seeing the bracelet, John's face darkened. "Jane, what are you playing at again? Take your bracelet back. I won't pester you anymore." John stared at me, his voice getting colder. "This amount of money is nothing to me. If you don't want it, just throw it away." As soon as he finished talking, I turned and tossed the bracelet into the trash can nearby. "The stuff you gave me before, you can throw those away too." After that, I didn't look at him again and turned to leave. John stood there until I was out of sight. His face still looked unpleasant. One of his friends quickly tried to smooth things over. "Jane just has a lot of pride. She'll regret it tonight. I'll bet as soon as we leave, she'll be back here digging through the trash can, crying." Hearing that, John chuckled. "Let her be. If it weren't for our families, who has the patience to deal with her?" All right, don't be mad. We have to celebrate tonight. Don't let her ruin the mood." John glanced at his beautiful new girlfriend. Jane's annoying face was pushed to the back of his mind. Anyway, by tomorrow, she'll be waiting for him outside the dorm as if nothing happened, pestering him to go to class together. He had seen this show too many times over the years. When I reached the riverside, the rain was pouring heavily. I stood under an umbrella in the rain, thinking about the dreams I had recently. In those dreams, I cried and made a scene because of John's confession to Shirley. I jumped into the river that night to force John to break up with her. But what happened? I nearly lost my life. John only stayed with me in the hospital for 5 minutes before he left. Joan, who adopted me, felt ashamed of my suicide attempt and, seeing John's attitude, thought I was no longer of value. She forced me to drop out of school and sent me back to my abusive biological parents. My life went downhill from there, and I died miserably in a foreign land. After my death, the one who collected my broken body was the person I had always feared and avoided. Meanwhile, John was enjoying his honeymoon, never showing up. Recently, everything from my dreams started happening. If it weren't for those dreams, I'd be calling John frantically right now, threatening to jump into the river again. I was grateful for these dreams. They made me feel like I was reborn, given a chance to change my tragic fate. On my third call, someone finally picked up. I held my phone tightly, letting it rest gently against my ear. Leo? I hesitated before calling out his name. The heavy rain drowned out all the noise in the world. Only Leo's slightly lazy, deep voice came through. Jane? Leo, it's raining heavily, I'm stuck by the river, can you come pick me up? There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. I nervously gripped my umbrella, my palms sweaty. In my dream, when Leo collected my bones, he seemed to cry. His tears fell one by one on my decayed flesh and bones. I could even feel the burning sensation in my dream. Later, he kept a small bottle of my ashes with him for the rest of his life. He ended up alone for his entire life. Tears welled up in my eyes, choking me. Why are you crying? Leo's voice suddenly came through. Still that indifferent tone, even a bit impatient. I didn't say I wouldn't come. When are you coming then? Hang tight. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Alright, I'll wait for you, Leo. He didn't say anything else and hung up. 15 minutes later, I gave my umbrella to a mother and child seeking shelter from the rain. So when Leo arrived, I was drenched from head to toe. When he got out of the car, his lips were pressed tightly, his face looking icy cold. I brushed my wet bangs aside and gave him a bright smile. Leo, right on time. Jane, you might as well drown yourself for being this stupid. He had a cold look on his face as he grabbed my arm and shoved me into the car. Then he tossed me a soft blanket. Clean yourself up. Don't mess up my car. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror before smoothly turning the car around. I obediently wrapped myself in the blanket but couldn't help sneaking glances at him as he focused on driving. When he's expressionless, he always looks aloof and unapproachable. A lot of girls at school like him, but no one dares to confess. He's John's roommate. I often go to John's dorm, and every time I go, Leo always looks like he hates me. Even now, while he came to pick me up, his attitude was still ice cold. When he shoved me into the car earlier, he used so much force that my wrist still hurts, leaving a red mark. You'd never guess he's been secretly in love with me. Slowly lowered my eyelashes. Everything in the dream really happened. But now, because I've changed, many things have changed too. So, does Leo still like me? If he doesn't like me at all, am I just causing him more trouble? Dorm? Leo suddenly glanced at me. My heart skipped a beat, and I blurted out, your dorm. Leo gripped the steering wheel and chuckled. John won't be coming back tonight. I know. I clutched the edge of the blanket, twisting it bit by bit. I'm not looking for him. The car suddenly stopped abruptly by the roadside. Leo turned to look at me, his cold eyes sending chills down my spine. Jane, don't treat me like a part of your mess with John. I'm not. He gave me a long look and took out his phone. I'll call you a car. You can go back on your own. Leo. I bit my lip hard and snatched his phone. Jane. He looked at me, but his eyes weren't filled with anger and disgust. They just held a depth, brimming with countless emotions. Suddenly, an inexplicable sadness welled up inside Leo. I don't want to go back to my dorm. They all laugh at me there. I can't go home either. Can you let me stay at your dorm for one night? I hid his phone behind me, my voice growing quieter and quieter. Of course, if you really hate me and don't want to see me, then forget it. As I finished speaking, tears rolled down from my eyes quietly. Leo didn't say another word, but he started the car again. The car headed towards the school and finally stopped outside his dorm building. I followed Leo into the dorm. He went to the closet, grabbed a clean hoodie, and handed it to me. The bathroom is over there. He's tall, so the hoodie was huge on me. It reached almost to my knees like a skirt. After showering, I came out wearing just the hoodie, with bare legs. Leo gave me a glance and then quickly looked away. I walked past John's bed to sit by Leo's. The wet ends of my hair started to soak the bedsheet. The shampoo and body wash I used had Leo's scent. In the small space, The shared smell quietly created an indescribable feeling of intimacy. Leo grabbed a pack of cigarettes and coughed lightly. "I'm going to have a smoke." He went out to the balcony. I curiously looked around Leo's bed. His gray bed sheets were clean and tidy. The desk had a computer and some books, neatly arranged. I was about to check out the items on his desk when my phone suddenly rang. John's name flashed on the screen. I didn't pick up. It rang again, repeatedly without stopping. I set it to silent and put it back in my bag. "Leo," I called out towards the balcony. He quickly turned, put out his cigarette, and walked over. "What's up?" I had to look up to see him from the bed. Leo met my eyes for 2 seconds before looking away. I noticed his ears seemed a bit red. "I got your sheets wet. How are you going to sleep tonight?" He glanced at me, then at the wet spots on the sheet. His Adam's apple moved noticeably. He quickly turned to get a towel. "Go dry your hair first. I'll change the sheets, and then you can sleep with that." He grabbed clean sheets from the closet. I held the towel, recalling his ears turning completely red, and couldn't help but smile. When I finished drying my hair, Leo had already changed the sheets. "You go sleep. What about you?" He pulled out a chair and didn't even turn around. "I'll play some games." I sat on his bed, feeling a bit disappointed. Leo picked up his headphones, but before he could put them on, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then back at me before answering. "John, what's up?" My heart tightened, and I instinctively held my breath. "I'm in the dorm. You said someone saw Jane coming to our dorm building?" Leo turned to look at me again. Before he could finish, I sprang up, straddling his lap and wrapping my arms around his neck. Just as Leo tried to push me off, I leaned close to his ear. "Leo, tell him I'm not here." Beneath my grip, his skin burned instantly. I could see the tense, pulsing vein on his neck. His Adam's apple bobbed furiously, and his heart raced. I looked up at him as he gazed down at me. In his eyes, a desire was slowly spreading. "No, I've been here the whole time. She didn't come. Ask someone else." Leo finished and hung up. He tossed his phone aside and placed his long fingers on my waist, pulling me close. I clearly felt a burning heat. A buzzing filled my ears, and my first thought was to run. But Leo only tightened his grip. "Jane." His voice was hoarse. His hot breath brushed my ear and neck. I tried to shrink away, but his lips met mine. "Don't tease me. I don't want to touch you here." "Leo." I shifted, trying to adjust my position. The intensity was almost overwhelming. In a quick, breathless moment, I finally got a word in. "If you don't want to touch me, why are you kissing me?" Leo lowered his head, our foreheads touching. Between our tangled breaths, he closed his eyes as if trying hard to calm himself. "Hey, do you even know how to kiss?" "My lips are swollen." "Jane." Leo didn't open his eyes. His hands, gripping my waist, loosened up a bit. His fingers were long and strong, gripping my waist through my hoodie, making me feel both pain and excitement. "Leo." I couldn't help but frown and tried to push his hands away. But Leo grabbed my fingers. "Jane, don't move. I'll be gentler this time." When his words settled, Leo's hands moved to my lower back. He pulled me tight against him, pressing close. This kiss was long but gentle. At the end, he lost some control and kissed me deeply. "Leo." I lightly pounded on him, and in the moment of catching my breath, I bit him. "Jane." Leo's voice was hoarse and shaky. His whole body tensed. The warmth in his palms almost melted my body. Leo suddenly buried his face in my neck, letting out a low groan. The volcano had erupted, then calmed down. But soon, it was on the verge of erupting again. Leo gently pushed me away and helped me stand. I noticed his face looked strange. The air was filled with a strange and unfamiliar scent. I couldn't help but ask, "Leo, what happened just now?" His ears were red as blood. This usually cold and distant man now had eyes filled with desire. "I'll go take a shower." He stood up, lowered his eyes, and straightened the hem of my messy hoodie. "You go to sleep first." Before I could say anything, Leo had already rushed into the bathroom. As the water started running, I lay on Leo's bed and rolled around. I used the back of my hand to cool my flushed face. I seemed to have a faint idea of what was going on. But Leo's tall frame, his frequent workouts, his lean muscles, his high-bridged nose, sharp jawline, long and strong fingers. None of it seemed like he was the kind of guy who'd be quick. Could he have never had a girlfriend before? Had he never been close to a girl? Thinking of this, my heart filled with sweet bubbles. I lay on Leo's pillow and unexpectedly found a pearl earring under it. The earring looked familiar. It was a pair I usually loved to wear. Once, when I was at John's dorm, I lost one and couldn't find it anywhere, so Leo had found it. I suddenly realized. In those dreams before, this earring seemed to always be with him. I stared blankly for a while, then put the earring back under his pillow. The sound of the blow dryer stopped. Leo came out wearing a dark blue loungewear set. With the steam rising, his skin looked like white jade. His hair fell in place, losing some of its usual sharpness and cold demeanor. I don't know why, but Leo seemed kind of obedient right now. Just as I was about to call him, voices came from outside the door. My expression changed, and I froze. One of the voices outside clearly belonged to John. Leo's face darkened too, but his reaction was quicker than mine. When John pushed the door open, Leo had already shoved my clothes into the wardrobe. My shoes were hidden under the deepest part of the bed. And Leo was just lifting the blanket up. Only a small nightlight was on in the dorm, the light dim and dull. I hid under Leo's blanket. There were only slight, not very noticeable, humps. Even if John came close, he wouldn't notice anything out of place unless he looked closely. "Why'd you turn off the lights so early?" John asked curiously. "Got a bit of a headache from the rain." Leo was saying this while gently holding my wrist under the blanket, stopping me from moving around. The bed was only about 4 feet wide, and with Leo being tall, he took up a lot of space. My whole body was almost pressed against him. I could faintly feel his muscles tensing around his waist and abdomen. "All right." John didn't turn on the light. He sat on a chair and picked up his phone to make a call. He made several calls, none of which were answered. John was clearly a bit peeved. "Leo, do you think Jane is doing this on purpose?" "What?" "I just confessed to Shirley today, and now Jane's pulling this stunt to mess with me. The news just reported that a female college student committed suicide by jumping into the river. I thought she was freaking out, so I ditched Shirley and drove like mad to get there, but it wasn't her. No matter how many times I called her tonight, she didn't pick up, and she's nowhere to be found now." John dropped his phone on the desk. "She's just trying to ruin my date tonight." John sneered. "I bet she'll cling to me for a lifetime." "Not necessarily," Leo suddenly said. John was a bit surprised. "Not necessarily?" "Leo, you've seen how she's been clinging to me these past 2 years. You find her annoying too, and you've never treated her well." Hearing this, I couldn't help but bite Leo on his waist. He winced in pain, instinctively trying to block, but his hand brushed my lips. So I lightly bit his finger. Leo's whole body tensed up instantly, letting out a low hiss. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just a leg cramp." Leo's voice was hoarse. He said it and then coughed a few times. "Fine, rest well then. I won't bother you," John said, standing up. "I'll use the restroom and then I'm out of here." When he pushed open the door to the bathroom, something suddenly crossed my mind. Earlier, I had casually washed my socks while showering. And now, they're still hanging in there. Sure enough, a couple of minutes later, John came out with a teasing grin on his face. "Leo, did you bring a girl to the dorm? Kept it tight-lipped, huh? Who's the lucky lady that got you? Don't talk nonsense." John took a few steps closer to the bed. Going to sleep so early? Are you hiding someone in your bed? John. Leo's voice suddenly turned cold. Alright, I won't go over. John stopped, but his eyes were gleaming with interest as he gave Leo's bed a knowing look. Do you have any condoms? I've got spares if you need. Under the blanket, Leo gently grabbed the back of my neck, making me lie still on top of him. Only then did he look at John, his voice a bit icy. Don't joke about girls like that. Seriously? John seemed surprised. Leo's lip corners tightened, and his Adam's apple bobbed. If the light were a bit brighter, John would have seen the expression of suppressed restraint on his face. It was quite tormenting. Because although he was holding my neck to keep me still, other parts of me weren't restricted. After all, under the blanket, no one could see. So, I carefully caressed Leo's abs. Each time I touched, his muscles tensed a bit more. I secretly reached down, and when I touched his Adonis belt, Leo had a big reaction. It scared the hell out of me. Okay, I won't bother you guys. I'm staying out tonight. John knew what he was implying, and gave Leo's bed an extra look. Yet, he couldn't help feeling a bit disdainful. Leo usually acted like he wasn't interested in girls, always cold to them. But now it looked like he wasn't exactly some high and mighty, self-controlled saint. If John wasn't mistaken, there was probably a girl hiding under Leo's blanket. However, John didn't expose him. He got along well with Leo. Even though Leo being more popular with girls annoyed him a bit, there was no other real friction between them. John turned and left the dorm. As soon as the door shut, I threw off the blanket. Leo, I was suffocating in there. Leo leaned against the bedpost, his gaze deep. The dim light fell on his handsome features, casting shadows all over. I was stunned. People say beauties look better under lights. Well, the same applies to men. Handsome guys look even more atmospheric under flickering lights. Jane, Leo slowly sat up. He reached out, brushing away the messy hair by my ear. He then cupped my face and spoke seriously. I wasn't annoyed by you, and I wasn't giving you a hard time. Don't take what he said to heart. After speaking, he let go of me. He threw off the blanket and got out of bed. You should sleep. What about you, Leo? He picked up a pack of cigarettes and pointed to the balcony. I'll smoke. You sleep. Just then, I sneezed. Leo stopped in his tracks. I grabbed his pajama sleeve, frowning pitifully. I think I have a cold, my head hurts. Leo looked at me for a moment. Hold on, I'll get you some medicine. I took the medicine but still clung to him. Leo, I'm a bit cold, the blanket's too thin. But this time, Leo pushed my hand away. Jane, John already left. You don't need to keep this up. What does that have to do with anything? Leo gave a self-deprecating laugh. Why did you go to the riverbank tonight? Only then did I realize. John's words about a girl jumping into the river made Leo misunderstand. He thought I went there to do something drastic, called him to come get me, all to spite John. Honestly, it's understandable why he'd think that way. For the past 2 years, my foster parents had been pressuring me. After they found their biological daughter, they tried to send me back to my real parents. Later, probably remembering that I still had some value for a potential marriage alliance, they reluctantly kept me. To me, John was like a lifeline. I thought our childhood bond had some feelings attached that he'd pull me out of my misery. I placed all my hopes on John. But to others, it looked like I was madly in love with him. Especially for Leo, being John's roommate, he must have witnessed many of my desperate moments. Leo, I wanted to explain. But he stood up. Set your alarm. Leave early tomorrow, don't let anyone see you. Because this kind of thing isn't good for girls. Leo, but he didn't stop, didn't turn back. I bit my lip hard. So after kissing me so many times tonight, you're not going to take responsibility? Leo suddenly halted. He turned to look at me. I sat on the bed, my eyes red, but I was holding back tears. I know you hate me. Every time I came here before, you'd ignore me. But tonight, thank you for coming to get me and letting me stay. If you really don't want to have anything to do with me, I'll leave now. I got out of bed. Couldn't find my shoes, didn't care, walked barefoot out the door. As I passed by Leo, my head down, silent tears streamed down my face. Jane. Leo pulled me back. I said before, I don't hate you. Then will you take responsibility? I shrugged off his hand, looked up stubbornly. You kissed me, hugged me. Even did that. Leo suddenly grabbed my chin and kissed me hard. Jane, he breathed heavily on my lips. If you're going to provoke me, then do it thoroughly. I hugged his lean waist, stood on tiptoe to return the deep kiss. Okay. During the long vacation, I went to the city where my biological parents lived. Stayed for 3 days. When I left, those despicable people, guilty of every vice, were taken away by the police. Harsh legal punishment awaited them. Human trafficking, gambling, forcing good people into prostitution. Thanks to those dreams, I had plenty of evidence. I didn't need to wait for a reincarnation or another life. This lifetime, I could free myself from those monsters and make sure they got their just desserts. As I boarded the plane, I let out a long breath. The biggest burden on my heart had been settled at that moment. I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom and relaxation. Upon landing, I let Leo know I was safe. He didn't know the real purpose of the trip, thinking I was simply out with friends. Tonight I'm coming over, is the house ready? Leo had moved to off-campus housing. Being a senior, he hardly needed to be at school anymore. Plus, living with John was inconvenient. All set up. Should I come get you? Sure. Jane. Yes? Today's John's birthday. He's having a party and wants me to bring my girlfriend. I had forgotten about John's birthday. Jane, do you want to come with me? I didn't reply, feeling a bit conflicted. Not that I didn't want to make our relationship public, but soon my foster parents might cut ties with me. My disgraceful background would be revealed to everyone. I knew Leo wouldn't mind, but I didn't want him insulted because of me. Just like in the dreams, they would accuse him of betraying his family for a disgraceful woman. But as Leo had said that day, I started this, I had to see it through. You can't have everything both ways. Leo, I took a deep breath. Do you want me to go? Yes, he answered without hesitation. Then come get me, I'll go with you. Holding my phone, I glanced at my reflection in the glass. As I said those words, I realized I was smiling, sparkling even. Jane, look outside. My heart seemed to skip a beat. Turning around felt like a slow-motion scene in a movie. My smile still strong, background noise fading away. Amid the bustling crowd, I saw Leo. I only saw Leo. I dropped my suitcase and ran toward him without hesitation. Leo stood still but opened his arms. I jumped into his arms, and he caught me steadily. Despite the momentum, he didn't take a single step back. I wrapped my arms around his neck and smiled up at him. You've got a strong core. He looked down at me and chuckled softly. My back is strong too. Wanna try it? I poked his firm abs and whispered in his ear, giggling. You're a bit fast. Jane. He sounded a bit exasperated but still youthful and competitive, his eyes full of defiance. Just wait. No begging and crying won't help. Tonight's birthday party, as usual, John invited a bunch of people. Shirley was exceptionally dressed up tonight, looking stunning. The two sitting together were quite a sight. Several girls complimented Shirley, making her glow with joy. She couldn't help but glance at John, but he seemed a bit distracted. John. Shirley called him several times before he snapped back. What? It's getting late, and everyone's hungry. What's the rush? Not everyone is here yet. Who's missing? Yeah, who hasn't come? Leo isn't here yet. Oh, Jane isn't here yet. Will Jane come? It's John's birthday, Jane wouldn't miss it. John suddenly interrupted, I didn't invite her. Even if she comes, I won't let her in. John, don't get upset, it's your birthday. Shirley quickly comforted him gently. Don't let irrelevant people spoil your mood, right? True. John looked at his girlfriend beside him. Shirley was indeed very pretty. Jane was beautiful too, but not in the same dazzling way. So when he first met Shirley, he was instantly attracted. But after getting together, he found out it wasn't all that. In the past month, Jane hadn't been waiting for him outside the dorm. She didn't cling to him for classes or meals. She had seemingly vanished from his world. If they bumped into each other at school, she would turn and avoid him. John had to admit, he wasn't used to it. Yes, he chalked it up to a habit. He wasn't used to someone who revolved around him every day suddenly turning cold. He didn't like Jane. Definitely not enough to anger his elders over an imposter like her. But they had known each other for years. John thought, just tonight, if Jane couldn't resist and came to find him, she didn't need to apologize. Just let her eyes well up with tears, and he would save a place for her by his side. Suddenly, the door to the private room was pushed open. Guess who I just saw? A guy came in, looking gossip-heavy, but his eyes landed on John. Who? Don't tell me it's Jane. It really is Jane. John, we were right, Jane can't stay away from you. Couldn't resist tonight, could she? John didn't say anything, but the gloomy look on his face significantly lightened. Shirley's expression changed subtly. She tugged at John's sleeve, slightly agitated, softly saying, John, can you make Jane leave? She chased after you for so long, and it bothered me. John looked at Shirley, thinking she looked nicer now. His mood improved inexplicably. But Jane's recent behavior still made him angry. Even though he decided to forgive her, she needed a punishment. Fine, let her get lost then. John pinched Shirley's cheek, replying nonchalantly. Who are you telling to get lost? The slightly open door was pushed open again, and Leo strode in. His voice wasn't loud, but it had an authoritative weight. The large room fell silent suddenly. Everyone saw that behind Leo was a girl. And that girl was Jane. John remained seated but clenched his wine glass until it shattered. Shirley screamed. Blood! John, you're bleeding. Get out. John. I said get out, didn't you hear? John suddenly stood up, smashing the broken glass onto the floor. Shirley was stunned for a moment before bursting into tears and running out. The others tactfully left the room as well. John's hand hung by his side, blood dripped to the floor. But he seemed oblivious to the pain, staring hard at Leo. After a long moment, he pointed at me. Leo, don't you owe me an explanation? Leo's grip on my hand under his sleeve tightened. His fingers were dry and firm, giving a sense of calmness. An explanation for what? Why is Jane with you? Didn't you invite me and my girlfriend to your birthday party? Forgot. Leo pulled me closer, wrapping his arm around me. John seemed like an enraged beast instantly. His bleeding hand grabbed the cup in front of him and smashed it to the ground. Leo, you know Jane is mine, right? Yours? As in girlfriend or fiancé? Leo held his ground. Or are you saying any girl who likes you is forever your property? John's eyes were bloodshot, a deep red. You knew Jane liked me, and you still took her? John, he didn't take me. I squeezed Leo's hand and looked at John. I made the first move. And I don't like you. Probably haven't liked you for a long time. Looking at him, I realized I was already over it. After all, any girl with a bit of self-respect wouldn't fall for someone who never respects her one bit. Nor would she fall for someone cold and indifferent, summoning her at will and dismissing her just as easily. Maybe, during those years we grew up together, there was some hazy affection. But after my true identity was revealed and his attitude changed drastically, those feelings had long turned to dust. Jane, what did you say? John seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. You damn near jumped into the river for me, and now you say you don't like me? I never thought about jumping into the river for you. I went to the river that night just to find a reason for Leo to pick me up. John was suddenly stunned. After a while, he looked at me with eyes almost bursting, gritting out each word. So, the person in Leo's bed that night in the dorm was you? That's right, it was me. John, go on with your relationship. I told you that night that I would never cling to you again. And I won't go back on that. After saying this, I didn't give him another glance. I pulled Leo and turned to leave. Leo, let's go home, I want to see what our new place looks like. But Leo didn't move. He looked at John with a calm yet sharp look. John, I don't want to hear anyone bad-mouthing my girlfriend from now on. John was completely losing it, so much that he couldn't control his words. Leo, who the hell do you think you are? Leo just gave a faint smile. If you don't know who I am, maybe you should go ask your dad when you get home. John suddenly quieted down. His gaze shifted from Leo's face to mine. His once handsome face now looked oddly twisted. Jane, does Leo know about your identity? It's kind of shady to hide something that big from him, don't you think? Although I had long been prepared for my background to be revealed to the world, it was still somewhat embarrassing and helpless to have John uncover it so suddenly. The hand Leo was holding almost instantly went stiff and cold. Cold sweat seeped from my palm, layer by layer. Seeing my face turn pale, John laughed. So, you are hiding it from him? I told you, if he knew your true background, Leo would stay away from you. He wouldn't touch you even if you threw yourself at him. John. Leo suddenly let go of my hand. With an expressionless face, he rolled up his sleeves, one fold at a time, and handed me his watch. I used to think you were just a womanizer and not a good person, but not entirely despicable. But now I've realized. Leo took a step forward, grabbed John by the collar, and slammed him hard against the wall. You're not only a disgusting scumbag. John flew into a rage and tried to fight back, but Leo punched him hard in the face. You're also a coward, a loser. And John, unlike you, I only like Jane. Her name is Jane, so I like Jane. It's that simple. But Jane isn't pure anymore. Leo didn't let him finish, punching him hard in the face again. John cried out in pain, holding his bleeding nose and mouth as he fell to the ground. I feared Leo might hurt John seriously, so I quickly grabbed him tightly. Leo, stop it, something bad will happen. Leo's face was cold, but he stopped his hand. He glanced at John, whose face was covered in blood, took out his phone, and called someone to clean up the mess. He then held me in his arms. Jane, let's go home. When we got to the car, I suddenly stopped him. Leo, do you believe me? What? I looked up at Leo. He was wearing a dark gray shirt, cold and dignified, incredibly handsome. The way he got angry and fought just now. If it had been the old me, I would have been terrified and kept my distance. But now, I just feel warm inside. All those years, I desperately tried to grab onto any lifeline. But things never went as I hoped. The elders who once adored me no longer saw me as their precious gem. Though they didn't hit or scold me, their arrogant and detached coldness was enough to push a teenage girl to the brink. The childhood friend who grew up with me distanced himself from me out of innate disdain. My biological parents were nothing more than money-grubbing scumbags and demons. Every day and night, I lived in fear of being sent back to their side, never to escape. And I never knew that someone silently liked me for so long. Thankfully, everything in the dream would never happen again. I never reached the point of no return, foolishly trying to use my body to tie down John. Nothing ever happened between John and me. Jane. Leo cupped my face and kissed me deeply. I clutched his shirt, my fingers tightening and loosening. Leo. When kissed until I could hardly breathe. My legs went weak, and I had to cling to his waist. Leo kissed my neck and said, Jane, I don't care about any of that. But hearing you say it makes me happy. You know, men can be somewhat selfish about this. I know, Leo. I told you all this not because I want to cover up for him. I'm doing this for you and also for myself. Saying this, I smiled at him and snuggled further into his coat. Leo, let's hurry home, it's freezing. All right. He held my hand, holding it very tightly. And that hold would last a lifetime. While things with Leo were not completely out in the open yet, I went to my foster parents' place and talked with them all afternoon. In the end, with Joan, the real eldest lady, mediating, I got back my guardianship. From that moment, I was finally free from any ties to them. I chose this timing because I knew them too well. If they knew about my relationship with Leo, they would latch onto Leo's family like vampires. And I didn't want Leo to get dragged into that mess. When I left the house, my foster mom wasn't happy at all. "Jane, we raised you all these years and spent millions on you, and we got nothing in return." But my mindset had completely changed by then. They treated me like a treasure for 16 years, until their real daughter came back. I did have a few tough years, but I never starved or froze. And Joan, who was once full of malice towards me, for some reason, she suddenly changed her attitude. To be honest, she had a hand in me being forced to drop out of school and sent back to my biological parents. But now, she was the one who spoke up for me. She helped me resolve my last lingering issue. Also, she convinced my foster mom not to spread my shameful background all over town. Now, I am a free, unbound Jane. No person or thing can tie me down anymore. I am content. I respectfully bowed to my foster mother. "I will never forget your kindness." Nice words. My foster mother shot me a cold look. "You couldn't even handle John, your childhood sweetheart. How are you ever going to succeed in life? Just go, I'm sick of looking at you." She waved me off. I decided not to explain any further. I just gave Joan a glance. "Mom, I'll walk Jane out." Joan spoke up, and my foster mom's demeanor softened. "Come back quickly, dinner's soon." "Got it." Joan smiled and nodded, pulling me out of the living room. We walked to the garden and finally stopped. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and we suddenly started laughing. "Sis." I gently hugged her. "Thank you." As I spoke, Joan softly said, "Jane, I'm sorry." We didn't say much, but we both understood. Joan's apology was for the Jane in my dream. My eyes turned red, and Joan's eyes teared up too. Finally, she firmly squeezed my hand. "Jane, this time, you must be very, very happy." "I will, sis, you too. I will repay their upbringing through Joan in some other way. She suffered for 16 years, while I enjoyed her good fortune for 16 years. In the dream, I hated her, but now, all is forgiven." When Leo took me to meet his parents, to be honest, I was really nervous. A few years ago, his mother started practicing Buddhism for some reason. Every year, without fail, she would go to the temple to pray. Don't be nervous, my mom's been really nice since she turned to Buddhism. And my dad, he listens to her. Leo seemed to sense my anxiety and kept reassuring me all the way. But the closer we got, the more nervous I became. "Leo, let's do this another day, I'm scared." I tugged on his sleeve and stopped, refusing to move forward. "Jane." Leo shook his head helplessly. "Mom's already coming out to meet us." Sure enough, his mom was already coming down the steps towards the car. He had no choice but to follow Leo. "Mom, this is Jane." "Hello, Mrs. Smith, I'm Jane." I hurriedly greeted her and handed over the prepared gift. She took it with a smile but kept her eyes on me. Even after we entered the living room, she continued to stare at me. Eventually, she just took my hand and wanted to talk in the upstairs study. I got scared and looked at Leo for help. His mom held onto my hand. "Don't be afraid, Jane. We're just going upstairs for a little chat." Then, she turned and joked at Leo. "Don't be nervous either. Mom isn't going to eat your girlfriend." My face instantly turned red. "Mrs. Smith." His mom seemed particularly cheerful and didn't let go of my hand. "See, Jane is exactly as I described, so pretty and cute." Leo's father was a very gentle and kind gentleman. Hearing his wife, he nodded repeatedly. "Indeed, very pretty and cute." A good girl. I was bewildered and didn't know what to do. She held my hand, her eyes turning slightly red. Jane, don't get me wrong. It's a bit absurd, but all these years, I kept having the same recurring dream. In the dream, Leo never married and was alone all his life. He passed away lonely in his 40s. At first, his dad and I didn't believe it, we thought it was just a dream. But later, everything in the dream started coming true. Tears streamed down her face. All these years, I've been practicing Buddhism for Leo. I'm really scared that the end of that dream will come true. So I always thought that if that girl really existed and could be with Leo, it would be wonderful. When I see you now, I know all these years of prayers weren't in vain. Jane, you and Leo must be happy. My vision blurred sooner than I realized. In this world, there are scumbags like my biological parents. But there are also mothers like Leo's, who deeply love their children. How did I deserve this? To meet Leo and such a loving family. It made up for all the regrets in my dream. When we graduated from college, Leo and I got married. The wedding was still being planned. I wanted it simple and low-key, but Leo and his parents wouldn't agree. After we got our marriage certificate, I moved into Leo's place. He went to the bathroom to take a shower. While he was in there, I found the pearl earring I had lost before, under his pillow again. This time, I didn't put it back. Instead, I wore it. And only it. When Leo came out after his shower, I was lying on his bed, completely covered by his blanket, pretending to be asleep. Jane. A hot, moist kiss gently landed on my cheek. It tickled a bit, my eyelashes fluttered, but I kept my eyes closed. Leo seemed to chuckle softly, kissed me again, and then lifted the blanket to get into bed. But as soon as he did, his whole body stiffened. Jane. The warm glow of the night lamp spread softly, covering me entirely. The pearl's luster peeked from beneath my hair. Amidst the ups and downs, that light cast shadows, flickering in and out. Large swathes of black and white, dotted with faint reds. It was as tempting as red cherries in a white jade bowl. I felt shy at first, my hands and feet so tense they were almost rigid. But seeing Leo's reaction, my nervousness suddenly vanished. I sat up, pounced into his arms, and hooked my arms around his neck. Just like that night in his dorm, I whispered in his ear. Leo, do you like it? You're staring. I could feel all his muscles tighten. His body heat rising, skin scorching as if his blood was about to boil. His Adam's apple bobbed, a vein in his neck subtly protruding, looking incredibly sexy. I turned my face, my soft lips grazing that slight bulge. Finally, I bit his Adam's apple lightly. It was like opening the floodgates. Or a volcano erupting after 1,000 years of silence. In an instant, Leo took control, pinning me down on the bed. His kisses were intense, deep, and heavy. I could barely keep up. I felt like he was going to crush me. Jane. He kept calling my name, over and over, tirelessly. In the end, he gently kissed me. If it hurts, bite me. I closed my eyes and mumbled a light My nails dug into his back, leaving deep bite marks on his shoulder. But it still hurt. It hurt so bad that I couldn't help but cry. Leo. I looked at him through tears, feeling a little wronged. He looked so scary right now. Instinctively, I thought he wouldn't be able to stop. But Leo stopped everything, holding me in his arms. I wrapped my arms around his waist, suddenly remembering what happened at the airport. I couldn't help but ask, didn't you say crying and begging wouldn't help? The desire in his eyes hadn't faded one bit. I could see how much he was struggling, yet holding back. Leo held me tightly, his voice hoarse. I couldn't bear to. Leo, when did you start liking me? But he wouldn't answer, just held me tighter. Not gonna tell me? Then I won't tell you I like you either. Leo suddenly looked at me. In his eyes, beneath the surging desire, was a deep, tender affection. After a long while, he gently spoke. The first time I saw you. Jane, I originally thought I'd never get the chance to tell you. My heart suddenly ached. It's okay, Leo. We have a lifetime together now. Yeah, we have a lifetime together now. At some point, our fingers intertwined tightly. When I kissed him, he leaned down, kissing me back so tenderly. Leo, I don't hurt anymore. Do you want to keep going? The sounds that followed were enough to make anyone blush. It took a long time for them to fade. This night would be very long. And even longer, our entire lifetime together. In the surge of spring tides, let's speak of our love slowly and tenderly.